In 2025, silence is your superpower, not because you have nothing to say, but because not everyone deserves a front row seat to your life. The moment you start protecting your peace is the moment you start building real power. And today, I'm going to give you 7 things, no, 7 weapons you must keep private. Because when you guard your inner world, you own your outer world. Stick with me. By the end of this, your mindset will never be the same. There's something powerful about keeping your next move private. It's not about secrecy for the sake of mystery. It's about protecting momentum before the world has a chance to steal it. You see, when you tell the world what you're about to do, you give them the power to interrupt your process with their doubts, their opinions, and worse, their silence. And silence? That can be louder than criticism. When you expose your next step too early, you invite judgment into a room that isn't even built yet. Think of a builder laying the foundation of a house. He doesn't post a picture of the dirt and say, "Look what I'm building." He waits until the structure speaks for itself. Why? Because people don't understand blueprints. They only respect buildings. Psychologists have found that when you talk about your goals, your brain releases dopamine, the same chemical it releases when you actually achieve them. That's the danger. You trick your brain into thinking you've already done the work, and so you don't. That's why most people never finish what they start. They got the applause before they earn the victory. And let me be real with you. Not everyone cheering for you wants you to win. Some are just clapping so they can get close enough to trip you when you turn around. That's why your next move must be rooted in discipline, not discussion. Do you know how Steve Jobs shocked the world with the first iPhone? He didn't ask for feedback. He didn't run a poll. He didn't leak rumors. He worked relentlessly in silence. And when he finally stepped on stage, the world stopped. He didn't talk about his next move. He was the move. I've seen people lose everything because they spoke too soon. A young man I once mentored had a brilliant idea for a tech startup. He was hungry, innovative, driven, but before he even wrote the first line of code, he told everyone what he was going to do. He talked about it at parties, tweeted about it daily, posted mock-ups and dream logos. He got validation, but no traction. 2 years later, someone else, quiet, calculated, built the same thing and launched first. Today, the loud one is still explaining what he almost built. Here's the truth. Talk is cheap. Execution is the real currency. So in 2025, don't announce your moves. Develop them. Don't share your plans. Secure them. Let the results speak so loudly that you never have to explain anything. The most dangerous person in the room isn't the loudest. It's the one you didn't even notice. Make your next move your best-kept secret. And when it's time to reveal it, don't use words. Use impact. There are wounds that no one can see, but everyone wants to talk about. And today, people treat their relationship pain like it's social currency. They post their heartbreak, their betrayal, their drama, hoping for likes, sympathy, maybe even revenge. But hear me now. Just because you're healing doesn't mean the world should see your stitches. You see, pain is real. Heartbreak is real. But when you broadcast it, when you turn your healing into a public spectacle, you give away your power. You invite people who were never there for your love to now have a front row seat to your grief. That's not healing. That's hemorrhaging. Let me tell you about Marcus, a brilliant young man I once coached. He fell in love fast and hard, gave everything. When it fell apart, he didn't retreat to recover. No, he went online. Every week, he'd post passive-aggressive quotes. He'd rant about what loyalty means. He'd tell half the story, hoping the world would take his side. And they did for a while, until he became the guy who couldn't move on. The guy who used pain to stay relevant. And in trying to prove he wasn't broken, he delayed the healing that would have made him whole. There's a reason ancient warriors covered their battle scars. Not because they were ashamed, but because those wounds were sacred. A mark of survival. Not a badge to be paraded, but a reminder of what they overcame. Some pain is meant for quiet reflection, not public consumption. And let's go deeper psychologically. When you retell your pain too often, you reinforce it. The brain doesn't know the difference between a past experience and a vividly described story. You keep reliving the wound instead of releasing it. You keep feeding the identity of the one who got hurt instead of transforming into the one who rose. Let that sink in. You don't owe the world your side of the story. You owe yourself peace. You owe yourself closure. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is smile, not because you're unbothered, but because you're healing quietly, without validation, without pity, without applause. Consider this. The most powerful revenge is not a quote posted in rage. It's the version of you that they never got to break. The healed, evolved, unrecognizable version. That person, that version doesn't shout. It shines. So if you're going through something in your relationship, take a step back. Talk to God. Talk to a journal. Talk to someone who wants your growth, not your gossip. Protect your heart like it's still beating for something bigger, because it is. And when you finally do speak about that pain, let it be a testimony, not a tantrum. Let it sound like wisdom, not war, because in 2025, your silence isn't weakness, it's mastery. And those who learn to bleed behind closed doors become the ones who lead without scars on display. In 2025, one of the smartest things you can do is keep your income to yourself, not because you're ashamed of what you make, not because you're hiding, but because the moment you start talking about your money, people stop seeing you. They start seeing what they can get from you, or worse, how they measure up to you. Money, you see, doesn't just buy things. It reveals things. It exposes intentions. It shifts relationships. The friend who once celebrated your success now wonders why it wasn't them. The cousin who never called is suddenly pitching business ideas. The world doesn't clap for your wins. They calculate them. And that calculation, it's often driven by envy, not admiration. I knew a man named Lawrence. Humble guy. Built his wealth quietly through smart real estate moves. For years, he said nothing. Drove the same car, wore the same jacket, same watch. But one day, he posted a photo of a new lake house with the caption, "Built this from scratch. Hard work pays off." Within a week, he had 7 cousins he never met, 2 lawsuits from people claiming he owed them, and dozens of fake friends calling just to catch up. One post cost him his peace. The truth is, when people know what you make, it triggers something deep. Some will resent you. Some will romanticize you. Few will respect the grind behind it. That's why wealth whispers. That's why real power doesn't show off. It shows up. Now, from a psychological standpoint, the need to flaunt income often comes from a need for validation. Look at me, I made it. But here's the truth. If you need money to prove your value, you haven't built real value yet. Because true wealth is internal first. It's character. It's competence. It's consistency. And here's what's ironic. When you don't talk about your income, people still know. They see how you walk. They see the peace in your eyes. They notice the quality of your choices. You don't need to broadcast numbers to broadcast success. The way you carry yourself says more than your paycheck ever could. When you speak openly about your income, you attract opinions. When you keep it private, you attract curiosity. And curiosity is far more powerful than envy. Let them wonder. Let them guess. But don't give them a number to aim their judgments at. Let me say this clearly. If your income becomes a conversation starter, your peace becomes a casualty. And no number's worth that. So let your success be the silent engine behind your life. Let your lifestyle reflect your discipline, not your digits. Let your legacy be measured by what you built, not what you brag about. Because in a world that confuses noise with power, the quiet rich stay the richest in peace. And that, my friend, is a wealth worth protecting. Your next goal, keep it to yourself. Not because it's small, not because you're unsure, but because when a goal is still forming, it's fragile. Like a seed under soil, exposing it too soon to the wrong environment can kill it before it ever grows. You see, when you speak your next goal out loud, before the foundation is laid, you invite something dangerous. The opinions of people who've never built anything. The critics, the doubters, the well-meaning voices who tell you to be realistic. But realistic to who? Them? The ones who gave up? The ones who never even tried? Let me be clear. Your next goal isn't for public debate. It's for private discipline. It's for early mornings, late nights, trial and error. It's for you. Not for likes. Not for claps. Not for comments. It's a sacred promise between who you are now and who you're about to become. I once knew a young woman named Rhea. She had a dream to open a wellness center. She was passionate, focused, working on it silently for months. Until one day, she shared her vision at a family dinner. You'd think they'd cheer. Instead, they laughed. "You're not a doctor," one said. "You should stick to something safe." Something inside her deflated that night. She paused, postponed, almost gave up. And why? Because she invited too many voices into a dream that was still being born. Psychologically, here's what happens. When you share a goal, your brain rewards you with dopamine. You feel good, as if you accomplished something. But you haven't. You just talked. You just announced. And that false sense of progress can kill your drive. You get applause for the idea, instead of results for the execution. Now flip it. Keep your goal private. Watch how laser-focused you become. There's no need to prove anything to anyone. No need to defend your dream. You're not doing it for credit. You're doing it for change. And when it's done, when the goal is reached, when the vision becomes real, now you speak. Now you show. Now you lead, not with words, but with witness. Because in the end, the loudest goals are rarely achieved. But the silent ones, the ones worked on in shadows, fought for in solitude, built when no one was watching, those are the goals that change lives. So guard your next goal. Nurture it. Build in silence. Deliver in excellence. Let your actions do the talking. Because when you speak with results, the world listens. And remember this. Every great achievement started as a whisper in the soul of someone who refused to announce it too early. Let yours be one of them. Some things are meant to be dealt with in private. And at the top of that list, your family problems. In a world where people share everything, where a disagreement becomes a status update, where every argument is aired out on group chats and stories, we've forgotten the power of discretion. We've traded dignity for digital sympathy. But hear me clearly. Your family is not entertainment. Your pain is not public property. Every family has its struggles. And I mean every family. Don't let the highlight reels fool you. Behind the smiles, behind the holiday cards and birthday captions, there are wounds, old stories, disappointments, and breakdowns. But here's the difference. Wise people protect the mess while they clean it. Fools showcase it while it's still on fire. I knew a man, David, respected in the community, ran a small business, family man. One rough year, his marriage hit turbulence. Instead of working through it with integrity, he vented to friends, posted cryptic quotes, even hinted at things on Facebook. It didn't solve anything, but it changed everything. Clients looked at him differently. Friends picked sides. His kids saw the comments. And what was once a personal trial became a public circus. Eventually, he patched things up with his wife, but the damage to their name, their trust, their peace, that lingered far longer than the problem itself. Psychologically, when you publicize family issues, you create a permanent narrative out of a temporary storm. People remember what you told them, even after the situation is healed. You may forgive and move on, but the audience you invited in, they don't. They hold on to your pain like it's their entertainment. And you become a character in a story you no longer control. Let me say this. Venting is human. We all need someone to talk to, but not everyone should have access to your inner world. You need wisdom. You need people who care more about your healing than your drama. That's not Instagram. That's not gossip groups. That's someone with maturity and loyalty. Someone who understands that family is sacred, even when it's strained. You don't need the world to see who's right and who's wrong. You need peace. You need restoration. And sometimes you need distance from both the conflict and the commentary. Because when it comes to family, your silence isn't hiding, it's honoring. Your restraint isn't weakness, it's wisdom. In 2025, protect your name, guard your bloodline, handle the internal internally. Work it out behind closed doors with prayer patience, and principle. And when the healing happens, and it can happen, let the world see a united front, not a battlefield of broken words. What happens in the family should be rebuilt by the family, not reviewed by the public. So be the one who breaks the cycle of exposure and begins the process of restoration. That, my friend, is real strength. Your acts of kindness, keep them quiet, not because they're small, not because they don't matter, but because the moment you broadcast them, you've changed their nature. Kindness, when done for credit, becomes currency, but when done in silence, it becomes character. We live in a world where every good deed has a camera angle. Feed the homeless, film it, donate to a cause, post it, give someone your jacket, make a story. But if your kindness needs an audience, it wasn't really kindness. It was marketing. True generosity isn't loud. It's intentional. It's not about being seen doing good. It's about doing good even when no one's looking. There's a story of an elderly janitor in a local high school, Mr. Ray. For years, he'd bring lunch for a student who always forgot his. No cameras, no announcements, just quiet compassion. When asked about it years later, he simply said, "If you saw a kid hungry, you'd do the same." That boy grew up, became a businessman, and started a foundation to feed kids across 5 cities. When asked what inspired him, he said, "A janitor with a brown paper bag and a heart big enough to feed me daily." Mr. Ray never knew he was changing a life. That's the thing about real kindness. It echoes beyond what we can see. Psychologically, when we share our good deeds for applause, we trigger a reward system in our brain that makes us feel done. We check the box. We feel complete. But real kindness doesn't seek closure. It seeks impact. It doesn't end when people see it. It begins when people feel it. And let's be honest, when we boast about our giving, we shift the attention from the act to the actor, from the one in need to the one being praised. We steal the humility out of the help. And in doing so, we make the moment about us. But here's the beauty of silent kindness. It builds something powerful inside you. Integrity, empathy, inner strength. You walk through the world with a quiet confidence, knowing you did good and needing nothing back. That's rare. That's real. Let others talk about what they gave. You just give. Let others flash their generosity. You just live it. Because in the end, kindness that's remembered isn't always the kind that's recorded. It's the hand that reached out when no one else did. The word spoken when it wasn't required. The help offered when there was nothing to gain. So keep your kindness private. Not because it's a secret, but because it's sacred. In a world shouting for attention, be the whisper that changed someone's life without needing them to say a word back. And trust this, the universe always remembers what the ego forgets. That's where real impact begins. Your spiritual life, that's personal. That's private. That's yours. Not because it's shameful. Not because it should be hidden, but because it's sacred. In a world that's louder than ever, where people scream their beliefs and hashtag their holiness, real spirituality whispers. It doesn't demand to be seen. It demands to be lived. You see, there's a difference between sharing your faith and showcasing it. One invites others to grow. The other demands applause. And when your spiritual life becomes performance, it loses power. What was meant to be your anchor becomes a stage. What was meant to humble you begins to inflate you. I remember a man, quiet, simple, consistent, didn't preach, didn't post, but the way he lived, peaceful, gracious, focused. Every morning, you'd see him walking, hand behind his back, whispering words only he and God could hear. One day I asked him, "What are you doing out there every day?" He smiled and said, "Feeding my soul before the world starts screaming." That stuck with me, because that man had storms just like anyone else, but he faced them steady. Not because he was lucky, but because he was rooted. Psychologically, our spiritual life is where we draw meaning when the world doesn't make sense. It's where we go when things fall apart. It's our inner compass when our emotions are all over the place. And when that space becomes noisy, filled with the need for others to validate it, it stops being yours. It becomes theirs. And that's a dangerous thing. Your spiritual journey is not a social currency. It's not a performance metric. It's not a brand. It's a relationship. It's a rhythm. It's how you stay grounded when everything else feels shaky. It's where you learn to be still, to listen, to forgive, to grow. People ask, shouldn't we share our light? Absolutely. But you don't have to shine a spotlight on your practices to do that. You shine by how you treat people, by how you respond under pressure, by how you show compassion, even when it's hard. That's real light, and it speaks louder than sermons. And here's something to think about. When you protect your spiritual life, you protect your peace. You preserve a space where you're reminded of what actually matters, where your worth isn't tied to your paycheck, your followers, or your failures, where you're reminded you are more than what the world sees. So don't let your deepest beliefs become content for claps. Let them be the quiet strength behind your calm, the stillness behind your confidence, the grace behind your grind. In 2025, the loudest person isn't always the strongest. Sometimes, the strongest one is the one who kneels in silence and rises with purpose. Protect that space. Cherish it. Feed it. And let your life, not your posts, be the testimony. Because what you build in the silence is what shapes who you are in the storm. Your long-term vision. Keep it private, not because it's too big, but because it's too precious. People will try to shrink it before it grows. They'll question what they can't see, laugh at what they can't understand, doubt what they don't have the courage to dream for themselves. That's why your vision needs protection, because before it becomes real, it's fragile. And when something is fragile, you don't throw it into the crowd. You cradle it. You nurture it. You keep it close until it's strong enough to stand. See, everyone's got an opinion, but not everyone's earned the right to shape your future. When you share your dreams too early, you invite people into a process they're not qualified to guide. And often, their words sound like concern, but feel like limitation. That's too risky. You should just be grateful for what you have. Do you really think you can pull that off? Those aren't insights. Those are insecurities, disguised as advice. I once met a young woman named Carla. Brilliant, quiet, focused. While everyone else was posting highlight reels, she was working late nights, saving every dollar, learning in silence. Her goal? Build a school for underprivileged kids in her home country. But she didn't tell anyone for 5 years, not even her closest friends. Why? Because it wasn't a trend. It was a mission. And when the school finally opened, people asked, "Why didn't you say anything?" She smiled and said, "Because I didn't need applause. I needed progress." That's vision. That's focus. That's the discipline of keeping your eyes on the end game while the world tries to distract you with noise. Psychologically, when we speak our dreams too early, we get a premature hit of dopamine, the feeling of accomplishment without the actual achievement. We talk about building the life we want and feel like we're making progress. But talking isn't building. Sharing isn't executing. Vision without discipline becomes delusion. So protect your long-term vision. Let it be your quiet obsession. Let it wake you up in the morning and keep you up at night. Let it drive your habits, shape your circle, sharpen your focus. And when people ask what you're up to, just smile. Say you're working on something meaningful. That's all they need to know for now, because one day your results will speak. One day, the life you built will walk into the room before you do. And on that day, you won't have to explain. You won't have to defend. You won't have to prove anything. Your work will speak louder than your words ever could. Keep your long-term vision to yourself, not out of fear, but out of respect. Respect for the process. Respect for your future self. And respect for the power of quiet preparation. Because when you build in silence, you rise with strength. And the world only sees the mountain once it's climbed. Here's the truth. The more you talk, the more you leak energy. The more you withhold, the more you build power. In 2025, your silence will be mistaken for mystery, your privacy for strength, and your restraint will become your reputation. Because the moment you stop oversharing, you start over-delivering. Let them wonder. Let them doubt. But don't let them in. Protect your peace like it's a fortune. Because in this loud, noisy world, It is speak less, show less, move more. Because when you master privacy, you become unstoppable.